Okay, so we're going to start off now. Hi and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Q&A session today. This Q&A session is part of our series of business resilience webinars to support our business communities during COVID-19. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our amazing partners, Oury Clark and Doyle Clayton, who've been fantastic at providing us with real insight into the most pressing questions their clients are asking. And thank you also to those who submitted questions via Eventbrite, which has helped to shape us the discussion. So just a couple of housekeeping items. We will be recording this session and it will be available afterwards on our dedicated webpage for business resilience. Please ask questions in the Q&A. Karen, my colleague, will be monitoring the questions and she will highlight any questions as of when they arrive. Any technical issues that we can control, also raise it in the Q&A tab so it's not missed. So just a few introductions then. I'm Lisa Stafford, Inward Investment Manager at London & Partners. You can see me there on the right. I welcome overseas businesses to London and support with the practicalities of setting up and tapping clients into relevant networks. I'm also joined here by my colleague Karen. Karen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Lisa. Afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm Karen Sandu. I work at London & Partners and I help international businesses as they look to expand into London in the financial, business services and technology space.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, so I'm going to give you a slight overview of London & Partners. London & Partners is the trade, investment and promotion agency for London, helping to attract major events, conventions, businesses, visitors and students to London. And during these challenging times, our trade and investment arm is focused on business resilience. So that's helping our clients understand the current UK business environment, opportunities available to apply for, and also promoting the work done by businesses and our partners to support our communities during this time. I would now like to invite our partners to introduce themselves before we start. I'll start with Oury Clark. Andrew, I'd like to ask you to begin.
Thanks. Hello, my name's Andrew, whatever. Oury. I am a chartered accountant and chartered tax advisor and been thrilled to work with London & Partners for many years, assisting businesses from various countries into the UK. Hugh.
Hi, I'm Hugh Williams. I'm also a chartered accountant, work with Andy and obviously with London & Partners, assisting businesses coming to the UK, primarily from Australia and New Zealand, but from other places as well, depending on the kind of business you're doing.
Thank you, Andy and Hugh. Moving on then to Doyle Clayton. Anita and Liz, would you introduce yourselves?
Hi everyone, I'm Anita de Atagia. I'm a partner and I head up our immigration services at Doyle Clayton Solicitors. We're an immigration partner with London & Partners, but we do specialise in all areas of workplace law. We have 4 offices, 3 in London and 1 in Reading, and obviously during these strange times we're missing working in them. I'll be joined today by my lovely colleague Liz Timmins, who's a legal director and she specialises in employment and immigration law. Liz?
Hi everyone.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's all introductions done. We're now going to move into the first half of our Q&A sessions, which will be led by Oury Clark, and we'll be discussing the topics that cover what cash can be raised by an overseas business and what are the practical points to consider on doing business in the UK and into Europe during these times. So I'm just going to kick off with the first question, which is all on our minds at the moment. Given the urgent short-term need for liquidity for many companies globally, are there any reliefs that can be accessed for overseas companies which have a UK subsidiary?
So the good news is yes, there is a relief, which is the R&D tax credit relief, which is extremely generous in the UK and peculiar that it allows the conduct of R&D anywhere in the world. Most schemes don't do this, and most people are quite surprised to hear this. It's actually slightly a quirk of history why the rules are written that way. connected to the sort of history of European Union, I guess our own. But the basic fact is that you can conduct R&D activity. That's the development of science or technology anywhere in the world. And if that cost is charged to the UK company, that company is potentially eligible for up to 33% cash back, depending on the circumstances of that company. It needs to fit a commercial aim. So the UK is one of the most popular places in the world to put intellectual property, along with Singapore and Ireland, Hong Kong perhaps too. Sometimes people use Switzerland as a structure as well. But the UK has a low tax rate, 19%. It has the largest tax treaty network in the world. So a lot of people like to put their IP here because the tax treaty network is particularly important to reduce what's called withholding taxes that countries charge each other, particularly on royalties. And if you've got a treaty, you're likely going to be in a better position to manage that. So that sort of fits together that even if it's a subsidiary, if you wish to move some of your IP and charge some of your development costs to a UK company, you can claim cash back. And it's easy to do. 28 days from the submission of a tax return, you get your cash back. You can go back 2 years. You've obviously got to have the costs in the accounts. The potential downside could be if you are profitable overseas and you're raising an invoice to the UK, that might be taxable in the UK. But as I say, if it fits together with a commercial strategy to put your IP here, and with great respect to a lot of countries, the UK is actually very well positioned for that. It's a very attractive and easy to access relief. So that, I guess, is the good news.
Yeah, that is really good news, given that a lot of our companies are doing research and development in their home countries, and if they have a UK subsidiary, they could apply for this relief. So second question, are there any ways overseas companies can raise capital that they can use globally from the UK government, grants or tax incentives? So for example, if our international clients have a UK subsidiary, can they apply for UK government schemes and use them for global operations?
So the answer to that is yes. If you have a UK subsidiary that is trading in its own right, then access to anything that is available from UK government, thinking about the export support that's available in terms of export loans and things like that, it's all available to a UK company as it would be if it was parented here, provided it's doing it, it's under its own steam. It's not just sort of acting as an agent, if you like, to a parent back at home. I mean, in terms of raising other capital, grants, I always said that the checkbook's been long closed in the UK for grants. I don't know whether anybody remembers the DeLorean, but there's been a couple of white elephants that the government sort of proposed going with, and so largely the focus has been much more on investment and giving tax relief to investors. And as Andy's just referred to there on the R&D, you spend it, you can get it back. So it's much more, the focus is on if you make the investment, you're likely to make a much better investment decision than a panel can do. So therefore, they'll provide that support to support your decisions rather than trying to make them themselves.
Thank you, Hugh. Yeah, and I do remember myself, the DeLorean was funded by the UK government, and it was in some ways successful, still an icon.
Absolutely.
So in terms of any UK subsidiaries, any international companies that have a UK subsidiary and they want to apply for a UK loan or scheme, how cooperative are the banks in the UK to companies in terms of lending them money or opening new accounts for newly established UK subsidiaries?
Yeah, so as Hugh's mentioned, if you've got a UK company here with activity, the schemes that are available are there, the C-bills, there's the new bounce back loan, which is coming on Monday. you're able to go to the banks and claim this. It's for your UK company, that money. They're not going to fund overseas development. Each country is trying to look after their own at the moment. The banks are exceptionally busy dealing with a huge amount of inquiries. They're also under quite a lot of criticism because, frankly, they haven't been great, or perhaps they haven't set the scheme up in a way that is great. But this new bounce back loan thing is a result of it. So they brought in something, the C-bills, saying you could get up to 5 million quid, but there was a 20% guarantee that was required by the local company. Also, due to European law, they brought in a new set of rules a week or so ago. The European Commission said that the company couldn't have been in distress as at 31st of December. And they defined distress as they had spent half of their share capital, which is quite an arbitrary measure and has affected quite a lot of companies' ability to claim. I think the banks, being quite slow to deal with this, they've never been the fastest anyway, have received a lot of criticism. So now they've launched this bounce back loan, which is a smaller loan up to £50,000. And on Monday, you'll be able to apply for it. Again, it's got the same rule that as at the 31st of December 2019, the UK company needs to fulfill the balance sheet requirement, not be in distress as they define it. But that is said to, over a day or two, you should be able to get the money. But this is money for the UK. In regard to can you get a new bank account open? Well, with difficulty at the moment with the major banks, they are completely and utterly inundated with dealing with the situation. You can get e-money accounts, which to a great extent are just as useful, and London and Partners has an e-money partner. You can function, you can get those sorts of things set up, but it always took time for overseas companies to get UK bank accounts open. And at the moment, I don't, they've effectively said, I think you commented, Hugh, that they're sort of closed for business at the moment.
Yeah, official or unofficial line, that seems to be that seems to be the message at the moment.
Yeah, so it does seem in the short term that to open a bank account, it might be difficult to open a bank account, but it might be worthwhile opening an e-money account in the interim to access these loans for your UK subsidiary. So how is the startup community being affected by the crisis? And I know you've explained the bounce back loan. Can you give a wider picture of how you feel the startup community has been affected by this crisis?
It's tricky. I mean, the bounce back loan is perhaps something of an afterthought. It's to counter some of the criticism. It wasn't as bold and as quick as some other governments have managed. So very welcome from our point of view. There's restrictions on it. It's a maximum of 25% of your income, a maximum of 50,000. So it's not going to save or fund a startup business for very long. You're burning through cash, but the question always comes back with startups, where are the investors now? So I think still going back to that question, but as Andy and I were talking through some of these topics, we said, the startup community is the one that really has an opportunity to shine here and to show their worth. And we felt that it may accelerate the success or failure of some of those startups. And the government support has been a bit slow here, but we're getting there. I think that there is support there, but nobody's pretending that's going to last for very long to see them grow to the unicorns, certainly.
Thank you, Hugh. And then in terms of moving on from UK schemes and loans, we had a few questions on Eventbrite where the clients were asking, is it necessary to have a UK subsidiary in order to attract UK investment from capital investors?
Yes, so in regard to raising money in the UK, first point, which I think is the same point around the world, venture capitalists at the moment are holding their money back because they have many companies in distress. So there are a few of them that specialize in this area of sort of, downturns and distress that are probably active. And the majority of them are holding their money back because they might need it for other companies. The investment, and Hugh alluded to this before, there's an incredibly generous system in the UK. An investor gets 30 to 50% of their money back when they invest, provided the companies are structured correctly. And that is one of 3 or 4 reliefs they get, including never paying tax when they sell the shares, being able to roll over gains. It's why would I invest in something if I can, I'm going to have to invest 100% when I can invest and get a third or half back through the tax system. In order to be eligible for this, it's called EIS, Enterprise Investment Scheme, or SEIS, Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, the 50% rate. There's a simple rule, and you have to follow it. The top company in the group, the top company worldwide, must either be a British company or a foreign company with a UK branch. So having a UK subsidiary won't help you raise money in the UK very much, because if you are not eligible for EIS and SEIS, all the venture capitalists use it just about. You're restricting yourself down to a very small portion of the market, maybe 10% that aren't interested in EIS or SEIS. So you need that top company to either be British or to be a foreign company with a UK branch. What does that mean? That means you've got to register at Companies House, and you've got to have something physical, something tangible going on in the UK. And currently an office, maybe less appropriate, but a individual working from home of some substance, or several individuals would be enough to do it. And create, so you don't have to restructure. You could take your American or Australian or whatever company and register at Companies House, establish a branch. You are now eligible for the EIS and SEIS investments, which suddenly opens the door. I think it's also linked. They brought in something called the Future Fund, which is the government's. They will match investment. Unfortunately, the way this is structured at the moment is not compatible. People do not believe with EIS because it is, I won't go into the detail, but it doesn't look like it's compatible. So at the moment, the startup community is all slightly scratching their heads in London, trying to, or across the UK, I guess, but trying to work out exactly how to bring in match funding that is EIS-able and use the Future Fund. It is not quite clear how it will work. I think they may have to update the information and the guidance to make it more accessible. Yeah.
That's fantastic insight, Andy, and Oury Clark are definitely a company who can assist companies with accessing those schemes and becoming eligible. So just moving on to the second topic. So we understand that the UK is in lockdown. A lot of these businesses online are thinking about, when do you feel that there will be a sense when we'll get back to normal in terms of timelines for thinking about preparing for UK investment? So for example, do you think that a lot of our companies should be thinking about preparing for UK investment down the line, or should they be thinking that we'll potentially get out of this lockdown sooner than we expect?
Look, I mean, I think that the question is the same the world over.
Yeah.
I don't, there is, what is back to normal? I mean, we're presenting a webinar tomorrow, and we sort of, back to business as unusual is the heading we've gone for, because there are definitely going to be some changes in the way that lots of businesses run. If we talk about getting back to normal and the timeline for it, we only wish we knew. You know, there is talk of potentially second waves, potentially having, you know, sort of social bubbles and things like that, that you kind of elect who you can go and socialise with over a period of time. It's a phenomenally difficult challenge, I think, that the world is facing. So there is no clear idea about that. There are some businesses, as I said before, that are going to shine in this, and you know, some of them, some of my clients have certainly have seen their business grow and prior to this, and only expect it to accelerate now because of what they do, what they supply. I think the business culture will change. The property market in the UK is quite a tough one. You know, if you're looking for that high street presence, it can be very difficult to go into a very competitive space and find the kind of place that you want. there may be an opportunity out of this, sadly through failure of others or through a reduction in sort of businesses' footprint to take some of those properties on. So, but it's a brave person, I think, now to come and open a retail outlet at this time in any country. So I don't think that's unique to the UK.
Of course, that was a difficult question. We've got a question that's came up here in the Q&A, if Karen wants to highlight what's came through.
Thanks. Yes, Lisa. It says, can you detail why the SEIS and EIS schemes are not popular at the moment?
Oh, they're popular, but investing isn't very popular. You know, they haven't stopped as a thing. The question is that, you know, are investors investing? I mean, so the EIS and SEIS is a relief for all individuals, but it includes venture capitalists. So venture capitalists, most of them are just going, whoa, hang on, because they've got to recompute their entire, you know, focus. Some of them are entertainment focused, for goodness sake, you know, so they're sort of rethinking about it. If you're talking on an individual level and you go and find an individual and try and get him to invest, well, no, not many people are feeling very flush right now. You know, it also works on a tax year. So there's an opportunity just before the 5th of April when there were some people who probably wanted to invest, or accountants like us would have said to them, you should think about making an investment because you've made a capital gain, and they can get up to 80% back if they've made a capital gain. But that window is now closed until, you know, until we get back to April next year. So I think to Hugh's point, this is going to be a very long time until we have a vaccine. And I mean, big up Oxford, they're leading the way. You know, if you see in the New York Times, I think it was, or something, they've completed their test on a monkey. It worked. They're now starting human trials tomorrow, Thursday. If by September they should have results, but a year away from a vaccine, and well, how long has this been going on now? I don't know, a month. We're sort of mentally computing, you know, what this means for society. So, you know, it's hard enough to get money out of people at the best of times, but the scheme all works and it's sitting there ready to use. So, you know,
and I think, Andy, to add to that, you know, the complexities that you spoke of around that structural piece. For some companies, it makes sense to actually restructure and bring the headquarters here. That's a difficult conversation, I think, with the existing investors at the moment, to see that kind of change happening and the investment to do that. And then kind of navigating around it, if you've got that branch set up, it doesn't work for all companies. You know, it has to be that company that is extending its trade here. So there could be quite complex conversations with the existing investors as well as the new ones.
There's one timing advantage. All companies, or a lot of companies around the world, just took a massive hit in terms of their valuation. So when you get into tax, the problem with tax is countries don't like things moving between countries without taxing them. You can generally restructure things often within a country. So when Hugh's talking about restructuring, flipping structures and things like this, actually, this might be the time that you really need to think about it, because if you try and set a valuation at the moment, you could probably quite easily argue that you don't know what your business is valued at anymore, and the valuation has been very badly hit. Now, that's terrible if you're raising money, but it's fantastic if you're trying to do a tax thing and move an asset from one country to another. So there's an opportunity there. I mean, we've been saying that we believe the only real constructive way to go and raise money at the moment is under an ASA, which are safe agreements, they're called in America. Here they're called advanced subscription agreements, where you don't set a valuation. You take money now based on a future raise. And the ASA is compatible with EIS and SEIS. So it enables you to go to the market. So what we're telling all the startups we know, go to market, find money through ASA agreements, you know, offering a good discount when you get out of this. And then they get their EIS relief, and you don't have to set your valuation now.
Thank you very much, Andy and Hugh. That was great insight and very relevant to all our international listeners who either have a UK subsidiary in the UK or they're thinking about it in the future. Just letting everyone know that Oury Clark have a weekly webinar series that take place at 2 times on a Thursday to cover all markets. So you'll be able to listen to more of their great insights on their own webinars. And thank you to Andy and Hugh again for addressing the questions and sharing your understanding. So now we're going to move on to the second part of our Q&A with Doyle Clayton. And we're going to be discussing the new points-based system coming into force from the 1st of January 2021, as well as COVID-19 and immigration planning. So I'll just kick off with this opening question. So can you please give us a general overview of the new UK points-based system, which will be coming in next year?
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Lisa. Well, despite COVID-19, the UK government has made it clear that it is committed to opening the UK's new immigration system, and that will bring an end to free movement rights of EU citizens from the 1st of January 2021. So from that date, EU and non-EU citizens will be treated in the same way, and they'll need some form of permission to work or study here. Now, the proposals have actually been developed over time, but the full details of the new system are not available as yet. Now, in February 2020, the government released a policy paper about how the new points-based system is going to work, and this is the first substantive guidance that's actually been issued on post-Brexit immigration under Boris Johnson's government. Until now, the main guidance we had was, I think it was published in December 2018 under Theresa May's premiership. So they're still sort of phasing out and rolling it out to the public. And more recently, on the 6th of April, they published further details in the latest Tier 2 and 5 sponsor guidance, and that's available on the Home Office website. And more information or updates will take place during the course of the year. And then in terms of the benefits of this new system, I think the main aim is that the new immigration system is basically focusing on attracting highly skilled workers and students from overseas and to expand other specialist work routes.
Thank you. And I know that this new points-based system is quite complex and new to understand, and we're very grateful to have you on board to try and help us figure this out. Could you let us know, do employers need to do anything now with regards to this new immigration system?
Well, from the 1st of January 2021, there'll be a vast majority of EU and non-EU nationals that will want to move to the UK, and they will need a job offer before they arrive, and the offer must be from a licensed employer. So this means any UK business which may want to hire EU and non-EU citizens from the 1st of January 2021 onwards, that they'll need to apply for a Tier 2 sponsorship license before then, if they don't have one already. Now, license applications, they normally take around, what are we doing now? Yeah, it's about 2 to 8 weeks to process. But even before the COVID-19 delays, we've been anticipating there'll be a surge in applications. So if you are thinking about applying for a license, you should do so as soon as possible. Other things employers should be thinking about, if they rely on EU staff, they'll need to factor in increased recruitment costs. They'll need to add that to their budgets from next year. And they'll need to consider starting recruitment earlier to allow time for new recruits to obtain work visas, so around 2 to 3 months. And any businesses who rely on low-skilled workers from the EU, they're going to need to consider putting contingency plans in place now to mitigate the risk of not being able to recruit staff as easily from 2021.
Oh, well, there's a lot of things that employers will need to be considering now for their future immigration planning. So we'll just break this down a little bit. So we do have some clients that have EU nationals already in the UK. So what should they be doing with their current EU workers?
Well, any EU nationals that are living in the UK by 31 December 2020, they should be able to apply for what's called settled or pre-settled status under the EU settlement scheme. And they can actually do this up until 30 June 2021 to prove that they have the right to be here. And EU nationals who've been granted pre-settled or settled status won't need a work visa, and they can work freely in the UK without restriction.
Oh, thank you. And then
Yeah.
so thinking of some of those clients or international business who are thinking about advertising for job vacancies, do they need to advertise the job before sponsoring a non-UK worker?
No, which is absolutely great news. Currently, UK employers have to go through this whole rigmarole. You've got to advertise in 2 places. It's for a minimum 28-day period.
Oh, wow.
Before you can offer sponsorship. And it's called the resident labour market test, and it does slow down the hiring process. And it has, yeah, trust me, it's proved a frustrating sponsor compliance headache for UK employers and definitely for my clients. So the policy paper has actually confirmed, which is really fantastic news, that this resident labour market test will be abolished from the 1st of January 2021.
That is great, considering a lot of our international employers have already selected who they want to head up UK operations. Will there be a cap on the number of non-UK workers who can apply for this scheme?
No, again, great news, although the policy paper does actually say it's suspended rather than abolished. So they could sneak it in later on, so we just have to watch the space. But what we understand the government is saying, by removing this cap and removing the need to advertise, it will ensure that the new immigration system will be simpler and it will be quicker for employers.
That's very pleasing for many people who are listening in, that the UK immigration system will be a lot easier in the future with this scheme. So can employers sponsor non-UK workers in low-skilled roles, or are they all for highly skilled roles? Yeah, well, let me just give you a bit more details about what the new scheme actually says. And it's meant to be, the policy statement says that the points-based system is meant to be employer-led, which the current system is anyway. But what the new immigration system says, you've got to demonstrate, if you're an EU or non-EU citizen wishing to apply under the UK work visa route, you need to meet certain criteria. And that means having a job from a licensed sponsor, and the job needs to be at the right skill level. So from 1st of January, the 2021, the jobs will actually be at a lower skill than currently. So it'll be level 3 or above, which is about A level. And the current system we have, it's at NVQ level 6, which is about graduate level. And the other requirements, you've got to meet a minimum salary threshold, and you've got to meet an English language requirement. And there is some flexibility in these new visa requirements, which is unlike the current system we have. You can trade characteristics. So you've got qualifications or working in a shortage role against a lower salary. And what that means is, so if you've got someone who's on a shortage occupation list, the minimum salary will be £20,480. Or if you have a PhD in a STEM subject, but you can then swap that and make the necessary points that you need if you have a lower salary to get you to the minimum 70 points for your visa. So there's quite a lot in terms of the new system in that I think by reducing the skill level, opening it up, it means that there will be more roles who will be eligible for sponsorship. But in terms of the lower skilled roles, it seems clear that that's not going to be allowed. The policy paper is saying that the government is taking a really hardline approach to it, and they want to shift away from a reliance on cheap labor, they say, from Europe. But having said that, it is clear in the paper that there are going to be some visa routes for low-skilled workers, because they're going to expand the seasonal workers
in agricultural scheme. And it looks like they will retain the youth mobility arrangements in place already. And that scheme, it's very popular with Canadians, New Zealanders, Japan, Monaco, etc. And that allows young people from certain countries to live and work here in the UK for 2 years, and they can holiday when we can, travel around again, around Europe. So that's another way to come in on and do lower skilled work. But another point which is really important is the paper mentions introducing initiatives for scientists, graduates, and NHS workers. And yes. There'll be greater flexibility with these shorter term visas. And obviously, particularly in the NHS, they're not paid very well, but they are a very specialist role. So we don't know yet. It haven't made any announcements about these new visas yet. But do keep an eye on our website, and we'll definitely publish this information as soon as we know more.
I think that's a really fantastic overview of the UK points-based system and its development so far. It looks like it's a little bit skewed towards attracting high-skilled workers, but we'll see what developments come out in the next couple of months. So we'll just move on to more about COVID-19 and immigration law. So we'd like to apply for a sponsor license now under the current regime. How do we submit original documents in support of the application?
Yeah, sure. So as with everything, obviously, COVID-19 has impacted so many people across the world, and visa applications and sponsor license applications have all impacted as well. Normally you would have to, the Home Office is quite old-fashioned in that you have to submit original copies of things like your employer's liability insurance certificate and a letter from HMRC, and the Home Office normally won't accept you that sent by email, and they won't accept an ordinary photocopy or a PDF of it and that kind of thing. So we've had a lot of clients asking, what do I do? You can't get into the office, I can't go to the post office, and so on. So exceptionally for now, the Home Office are letting people file sponsor license applications by email, attaching PDF versions of documents, which is good. So it means that, for the time being, the coronavirus crisis shouldn't be stopping you from pursuing getting a license if that's what you want to do in the UK. Just make sure that if you do file by email and use PDF copies, you just explain why you're doing that in your cover letter, and say that it's because of the coronavirus. And also, there's a chance that the Home Office might ask to see the originals at some point. So as soon as you can, make sure you gather those together so you have them in case they ever ask to see them.
Thank you, Liz. Just a couple of questions concerning the Tier 2 sponsor route.
Mm-hmm.
Some clients were asking, can I employ someone under the Tier 2 sponsor route? And a second follow-up question, are Tier 2 sponsor workers covered by the furlough scheme, which is quite an interesting question.
Yeah, sure. Well, this is the thing. I mean, obviously, recruitment is so difficult in these times, and we've seen a lot of people who, especially people on a Tier 2 visa where they're sponsored by a licensed employer, they might have handed in their notice to go and work for another Tier 2 sponsor, and they're in between jobs and they can't progress their visa application because if you're in the UK, all the visa centres are closed. And to finalise and have your application approved and get your new visa, you need to go to an appointment and have your fingerprints and your photograph taken. So there was huge concern about those people that are kind of falling through the cracks. But if you're inside the UK, the good news is the Home Office have relaxed the rules. They've recognised that isn't an acceptable situation. So they're allowing employers to take on new Tier 2 staff as long as that Tier 2 person has applied for their visa online from inside the UK, and they did that before their current visa expires. And if they do that and they apply for their Tier 2 visa, then the employer can start employing them, even though the visa actually hasn't been granted. And then with the idea being that eventually the visa will be granted and then their work can continue. If obviously the visa is refused for whatever reason, then you have to terminate employment. So that's a really helpful solution that the Home Office have actually allowed to happen. In terms of furloughing staff, again, that was something that the Home Office and the government were quiet on for a while. which was really difficult for employers, because as soon as the furlough scheme was announced, it's been seized upon by so many employers, but it wasn't clear whether you could put tier 2 employees, people that are sponsored on tier 2 visas, work visas, on the furlough scheme and claim the government grant. But the government's now said that you can. So employers in the UK, if you've got any staff in the UK, you can put them on furlough leave, regardless of what visa they might be on. If they're on a tier 2 visa though, you do have to report, you always have to report changes in salary and that kind of thing. So you would need to report that their salary is 80% or £2,500, whichever the lower amount is, if you have dropped their salary in line with the grant. And you'd also need to report that they're not working for you, they're on furlough leave, because obviously one of the criteria for furlough leave is that you can't work. And then once they come back, once hopefully all this is blown over, you just report again that their salary has gone back to normal, and that they're back working with you.
That's really, really good advice. I'm just going to ask you one last question, and I guess it's a relatable position. I'm in the UK now, and my UK visa is expiring. What should I do?
Yeah, that's again a really typical question that we've had through. And at first, that was something that was only being addressed for Chinese nationals, because that was initially obviously the country that you definitely couldn't fly back to. But the government guidance now applies to everybody, and it's quite clear that if your visa is going to expire on or before the 31st of May, then you have 2 options. So if you ordinarily, you would have left the UK and your plan is to go back to your home country or somewhere else, and you just want to make sure that you still have the right to be here, then you just need to contact the coronavirus immigration helpline online by an email and tell them that you want to extend your visa. Whereas if your visa is about to expire, but you wanted to extend it or apply for a different kind of visa, then the advice is to submit your new visa application online. And although you can't complete it, as long as it's submitted before your visa expires, then the rights that you have now will just continue whilst your visa is pending.
Thank you very much, Liz. You've explained that really well, and I picked up everything you were saying. I think that clients would also find that really useful to understand as well. So I think that finishes off our Q&A. I'd like to thank you both partners very much for your interesting insights and support available for UK companies and international clients we're working with. Karen, could you please speak about the Zoom poll?
Yep, thanks, Lisa. So essentially we have a very quick poll, 3 questions, and I'll probably give you about 10 seconds to fill it in. But it's a good way for us, it's really helpful for us to ascertain your thoughts on this session and how to build on future webinars. So I'm going to launch it now. And if you could just scroll down to answer the questions. I'm just going to give you a bit longer. Great. Thank you. I'm going to end it now.
Thanks, Karen. So I'd like to once again thank Oury Clark and Doyle Clayton for sharing their expertise with us today and answering our most frequently asked questions. Our next session will be next Wednesday with our wonderful partners, Jolson and First Office Hub, and we're looking forward to next week's session. This session will also be recorded for those who can't join us on the North America side. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to highlight our Good Newsroom, which is a WhatsApp group where you can keep up to date with positive news stories, announcements and events for the London community or those interested in London. For example, yesterday we announced that our Visit London app now allows you to visit London attractions virtually, which is fantastic news and will be something I can do this weekend. Here are all of our contacts, and I'll be sharing them in a follow-up email to all of those who've attended. Thank you very much. Look after yourself and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.